Welcome to Japanese in Context. For our first lesson, we will be discussing the basic sounds you will find in the Japanese language. Let's begin with vowels. Japanese has 5 basic vowel sounds. They sound like this: a, I, u, e, o. Although it may be hard to believe, you now already have a clear understanding of the main sounds that comprise the Japanese language. To form other sounds, consonants are placed in front of these 5 basic vowels to form words. Here are some examples to demonstrate this. Ari, inu, ume, eki, otona. In Japanese, vowel length is something which must be paid very close attention to because it can change the actual meaning of a word and cause confusion. Take, for example, the word for the family relative aunt, obasan. When an additional a is placed after the ba, it becomes the Japanese word for grandmother, which sounds like this, obasan. You will find more and more examples of this as you continue your Japanese studies. For now, just to be aware that this is an important part of speaking with proper Japanese pronunciation. Let's move on to consonants. The majority of the remaining Japanese sounds are formed by attaching consonant sounds to the previously discussed 5 vowel sounds. For example, if we attach a K, we have the next set of sounds in the Japanese syllabary, which sound like this: ka, ki, ku, ke, ko. As English speakers, you will have no problem forming these sounds. And there are more that we will study later on. For now, just understand that this is how the majority of sounds in Japanese are formed. There are a few, however, which we should study now and have an understanding of before you continue on to memorize them. These are the sounds for R and F. The R equivalent sound in Japanese is not actually an R, even though we write it that way in English. It is actually more of a mix between an R and an L sound and possibly a D sound. In other words, it is pretty unique to Japanese. Here's what it sounds like: da, li, du, de, do. To make this sound, you should have the tip of your tongue behind your upper teeth. It is most close to a double T sound in English, which is often closer to a D when spoken by native speakers, as in the word letter. As with everything, only practice makes perfect. Moving on to F sounds. It is less of a distinct sound and more of air being pushed out of your lips. It sounds like this: hu. The F sound finds itself in the middle of sounds for H as well: ha, hi, hu, he, ho. Again, just be aware that this is the case because you will have more than enough time to practice this with real-world examples. Here is a chart listing out all the basic sounds you will need to know. Once this lecture is completed, you can find it in the attached assignment document. Next, let's talk about double consonants. In Japanese, as in English, consonants can be double. The difference is that in Japanese, there is a brief pause between the sounds. There is a special way to write this in native Japanese, so you will know when to pronounce it correctly. But for now, just know that this is the case. Here is an example of the word for ticket with a double P sound: kipu. Being that this is an introduction to Japanese sounds, it is not really necessary to go into all the subtleties that you will come across. There will be plenty of time for that. But there is one more sound in Japanese that is worth mentioning now, and that is the nasal sound. It is not an N sound, but rather a mix between an N and an M. Here's what it sounds like: And in context, here is the word for cheers in Japanese, which uses the nasal sound: kanpai. For the final part of this lesson, we should briefly understand that Japanese words do not have syllable stress, such as in English, but there are different pitches that while it might be hard for us to hear, make a large difference to a Japanese ear. This is important because you will surprisingly more than often find words in Japanese which are almost the same but have different meanings. Take, for example, the word for oyster and persimmon. Oyster, kaki. Persimmon, kaki. If you didn't pick up on the difference, don't feel too bad. It is simply one of the aspects of Japanese that you will get better and better at. In most cases, even if it is not pronounced correctly, no confusion will arise because of the context of the word in a sentence. But that is not to say you should not try your best to master this. Okay, that is it for our basic introduction to Japanese sounds and brings us to our writing systems. After you have had a good understanding of what sounds you will hear, please move on to the next lesson.